This is a very personal episode. It's been very reflective to take this time and to reflect on the last 20 years of ministry, worship leading ministry specifically, and be like, okay, what were some of the things that I've learned? These are the top 12 things that came to my mind first. And I thought, well, what better way than to put this out there, and hopefully this is an encouragement to somebody. I made a list. I started out to make a list of 10, my top 10 things that have been very influential, that I've learned over the past 20 years. But it was hard to keep it to just 10. So I've expanded this to my top 12 things. Point number 7, periodically take personality tests and gift assessments. I know that you got to be careful with this because we can just take, there's so many tests out there. There's the APES, there's the Enneagram, there's Strength Finders, there's the DISC, there's the Working Genius, there's the 5 Voices. I'm forgetting a few, but I'm just trying to spitball a lot of these. These are all helpful, but I know the tendency there is just take test after test and get bogged down, and sometimes they're less helpful than they can be because you just start really taking every little thing you're learning and you're trying to pigeonhole yourself and define yourself, and so just be careful with that because they're meant to be informative. They're meant to kind of help you discover how you're wired, what your gift sets are, how do you communicate with others, how do you work well with others, how do you deal with conflict in ministry or with others. These are what these tests can be good for, is to really help you learn more and more about yourself. And because here's the key, the more that you can learn about yourself, the more you will become aware of your strengths and your weaknesses. And that's super key in any type of leadership because there's always going to be conflict. There's always going to be tension. And sometimes there's severed relationships. But to be able to be more aware of, okay, then I can start to sense when I'm getting in an unhealthy place. And so now I need to be careful how I talk with this person or how I communicate with this person. That's the benefit, I believe, of taking these tests, to learn more and more about yourself. And then I did put point number 8 right after this because it's kind of a dovetail to it. Be quick to repair and admit when you're wrong. This has been some of my hardest learnings over the years. In fact, it did lead to broken relationships that at the end of the day became unmendable, unfortunately. But it's helped me learn and it's helped me grow, I believe. I think I'm a stronger person because of some of those seasons of my life. But if we're not careful, we all have that pride that's always kind of welling up inside of us. And that pride, when it really blows up, it's usually, for me, it's like, you are right, everyone else is wrong, and they're stupid for not listening to you. That's how the negative and the unhealthy pride comes up, and it manifests itself. And so I had to really eat a lot of humble pie, and I had to learn to be quick to repair. That's the key, because we rupture and rupture all the time. And you can't go back and change something that you've already done or said. We know that. And this can be even true of your personal life and your family life. Like, we're rupturing all the time. But if we can be quick to go back and repair, that will hold its weight, and that will help repair the damage that was done. And being quick to admit you're wrong takes a lot of humility. But to grow as leaders and people that are doing life together, this right here is extremely important. Number 9, properly define excellence and consistently pursue it. Psalm 78:72, integrity of heart and a skillful hand. So for me, early on in my years, I'm trying to grow. I'm trying to just learn. I'm just trying to take everything I can get. And I remember somebody gifted me a ticket to a national worship leader conference that was here in town in Kansas City. And so I'm like, I don't know how many years into my leadership now I am, but I go to this 3-day conference or conference, and go to all these breakouts and just take a bunch of notes and just intake, intake, intake. And those things are good, but they're also like, it's the whole phrase of drinking from a fire hose is completely true. Like, you're just intake, intake, intake. The bad part of those things is, for me, I started to see, man, this worship at this big conference is amazing. I am moved. I feel closer to the Lord. I feel inspired. I feel like I'm ready to take ground in Jesus' name. And so, but the thing is, you start thinking, okay, if that's what produced that emotion in me, and if that's what I equated with excellence, it's unrealistic to say I'm going to bring that back to my church of 70 people, this conference of thousands of people, and try to pull that off at my small home church. And so then you get discouraged and you feel defeated, and you're like, well, we can't have excellent worship because it doesn't look and sound like that. So that's why I say properly define excellence. And the way that I feel is the proper way to define it is doing the best you can with what you have. So what do you have? And how can you do the best with that? And maybe your technology is like, man, if I only had this soundboard, or if I had this guitar, or this microphone, or fill in the blank. But what do you have? And how can you do the best with what you have? The second part of that, though, is I feel like excellence, not only is it important to properly define it, but it's important to never let it remain static. You should always be looking to grow, to improve. What's the next step we can take? And again, knowing your context is key, but also like, okay, what's the goal we're shooting for? And how can we take the next step? And how could we become a little bit better? I know I've shared this in a past episode, but one of the biggest compliments I got from the last church I was at, a team member of mine texted me. It'd been a couple months since I had been gone, and he's like, man, I just want to say we miss you guys here. And he said, I just wanted to let you know, like, it was evident to me over the 7 years that I watched you lead here. You were always making things better. You were always looking to grow people and yourself. And that was just a huge compliment, because that was my heart. And sometimes when you're in the midst of ministry, you can't see everything. And you're like, man, am I doing anything? Am I producing anything? Am I really making an impact? And we know it's not about bringing a name for ourselves. It's ultimately pointing others to Jesus, making him famous. But since we are doing things for the Lord, they should be done well, and they should be done excellent. Again, excellent, doing the best with what you have. But you should always be looking to take the next step of growth. Number 10, practice spontaneity. You're like, what do you mean by that? And isn't that like an oxymoron or something? That doesn't even make sense, Curtis. Practice spontaneity. Well, here's the thing. I've talked a lot about planning and structure and how the Spirit is in the planning. I've not talked a lot about creating breathable moments. But in order to create breathable moments, you can't just go into a setting or a service, especially if your context has never been familiar with that, or the people on your team has never been familiar with any of that. And you can't just expect to go completely off script. Does the Spirit work that way? And does that happen? Yes. I'm not saying if the Spirit's telling you to do something in a service, then listen to the Spirit and do that, obey that. But create spontaneity would also, in order for us to create spontaneity, then we need to practice it. So how this has kind of worked for me, and could I do this more often? Absolutely. I probably don't do it enough, but in our rehearsals, at times, I would just give some space and just say, hey guys, let's just kind of hang out here. And maybe I'll give them a chord progression. I said, we're going to just hang out here. And when you give space, there's been some beautiful times that's come out of these times, and they've been few and far between, but nevertheless, they've been beautiful. The Lord, once you gave space for something like this, then the Lord, the Spirit, was highlighting a melody, or he was highlighting some lyrics for our congregation, for the people that we were getting ready to lead. And out of that ended up becoming a song that became very influential in my local church at the time. Have your way in this place and shine your light and pierce through the darkness. Please have your way. Like, it was just something, but it came out of an intentional time that we practiced some space, just with playing a chord progression, and then we started hearing something, and we started to flesh that out. But I think there's a misconception that when you go to some of these maybe charismatic churches or worship services, and you're like, man, that's just, the Spirit is evident in there, they must just be completely going off script. To say that they are, they might be, but also I don't think it's I don't think it's bad to practice that, and to give some context and space for that in your rehearsal times. Number 11, surround yourself with safe people where you can feel seen and heard. This is extremely important, to surround yourself with people where you can feel seen and heard. Man, this was something that I wish I would have learned quicker. And sometimes maybe it's just the way life goes and the way ministry goes, and the Lord allowed things to happen in his timing, and his timing is perfect. And so I'm going to have to trust that. But I think early on in my worship leadership, I was just so I just couldn't believe I was able to do this as a profession. Like, God had called me to pursue full-time ministry, and then he opened a door for that to happen. And so I think for the first several years, I was just like almost pinching myself, like, and this doesn't even seem fair that I'm allowed to do what I feel very called and passionate about, and I'm able to do that full time and receive payment for that. Like, it was just this, like, I was so blessed. So I think that kind of maybe outweighed some of this full context of, like, I wasn't even looking at some of these relational components and the importance of how to feel seen and heard. In fact, it wasn't even really talked about much in our circles. Like, well, all that seen and heard stuff, that's just all in your feelings, and you're not supposed to be led by your feelings because you can't trust them. And so then just kind of like make sure you're talking about scripture, and make sure you're having on the faith and praying, and then your feelings, it kind of feels like, well, then you kind of stuff them away because you can't trust them and you can't be led by them. So then what do you do with them? And so that's all, that kind of stuff was leading to just this lack of importance and focus on the benefits and how important it is to have safe people, and people that you can just share things with, that you're like, man, I'm struggling with this, and this is the emotions I'm feeling. I don't know what to do with it. And to be able to have safe people that don't leave you and they don't diminish that, that's extremely important. Number 12. We've reached number 12 out of my top 12 things I've learned over the last 20 years is model it. So all of these things I've talked about, I feel are very important, or at least they've been very important for me. If we're entrusted to lead others, if we're entrusted to shepherd others, to pastor others, there's a lot of times you get frustrated. In my context of worship leading, a lot of times it's this gauging the response from the congregation. And a lot of times I'll go and sit down after a worship set and be defeated and discouraged and be like, man, I just wanted to shake them. They don't get it. They look angry. They don't even look like they want to be here. It's that old 90s worship t-shirt that says, if Jesus is in your heart, then somebody should notify your face. There's times that's what I'm seeing. That's what I'm observing from the room. And it can be very discouraging. So that's my context. But I think a key component to this is Well, are we modeling it? I'm not talking about putting on a show. I'm not talking about, okay, this is the only way you should look and sound in order to produce authentic, true worship. Like, we know that that's not right. It's true and pure worship is from the heart, and it's in spirit and truth, and that's what the Lord's looking for. And so sometimes it's hard to really define that down into what that exactly looks like, because everybody's different and everybody's wired different and everybody responds to the Lord in their own way and differently. But I will say, a lot of times we're expecting others to do things that we aren't doing ourselves, and we're not modeling it. So if we are there to lead them, to pastor them, to shepherd them, then some of the best ways you can do that is by modeling it. So, case in point, if you are wanting one of your leaders to plan songs out in the time that you have told them you want them to be planned out, if you're not modeling that yourself, that's kind of an integrity issue. Like, why would they do something that you're not doing yourself? And so that's why I think modeling it is extremely important. You go first. You model it. You do what you say you're going to do, and you practice the things that you model and you value, and people will see that. And sometimes that's the best way to teach somebody. It's not just verbally telling them how to do things, it's showing them how to do things. So I hope this has been beneficial to you as we've looked at, these are just, again, this is a very personal episode. It's been very reflective to take this time and to reflect on the last 20 years of ministry, worship leading ministry specifically, and be like, okay, what were some of the things that I've learned? And there could be a bigger list, but I was like, okay, I don't want to have 10 episodes and 50 things, because will you listen to all of them? But these are the top 12 things that came to my mind first. And I thought, well, what better way than to put this out there, and hopefully this is an encouragement to somebody. Maybe you are, maybe you've been leading for just a couple of years, or maybe you've been leading for several years, and you're like, I hadn't thought of that. Sometimes it's just that collaboration or that idea. It's like, oh, I've never thought of that. I'm going to take some of that, and what does that look like to incorporate that into my leadership? So that's my hope, is that maybe it just sparks something in you or encourages you. And so, as always, if you would love to have a further conversation, you could email me, or you could book a call on my website. Go to curtisbiswell.com and book a discovery call. I offer coaching, but I'm always looking to connect with people. So feel free to shoot me a message, and let's continue this conversation, and let's grow together in our worship leading journey.